guys, welcome back to the GIZGUIDEPH channel, and you see it right here in my hands. We're going to be unboxing and sharing our experience with the new V21 5G and V21e. So first of all, both phones have a 6.44-inch Super AMOLED panel. The difference between the two is that the V21 5G has a 90Hz panel, while the V21e has a 60Hz panel. Next up is the processor. The processor of the V21 5G is the MediaTek Dimensity 800U, while the V21e has the Snapdragon 720G. Now both of them have similar memory capacities, 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. Now both phones feature the virtual RAM feature, which allows both phones to borrow RAM from the internal storage up to 3GB. So that's 3GB of additional RAM should the user need it. And then of course both have a 4000 mAh battery with 33 watts of flash charging. Let's go into the unboxing. Let's start with the V21 5G, of course. Let's open it up. Alright, there we go. Here is our phone. Let's put this to one side first. We have here, first up, is the silicone case. It's thick. It has a signature look of a Vivo case with that cover for your charging port. We also have the documentation and the SIM ejector tool. We have the 33 watts flash charging brick. It has the two prongs for the Philippines, and then of course USB Type A. And then we have our USB Type A to USB Type C cable. We have here a 3.5mm audio jack headphones. And surprisingly, we have a dongle over here, a USB Type C to 3.5mm dongle. This is very rare in phones right now. In fact, Vivo has continued to give us a complete package. So let's get the phone first. Alright. It's very pretty. Now since we're here, let's check the SIM tray. Let's see what we're getting. Let's get the SIM ejector tool. The SIM tray is over here at the bottom. Oh, and as you can see, okay, it uses a hybrid system. As you can see here, we have a nano SIM slot, and then over here at the back we have a nano SIM slot that also doubles as a micro SD card slot. So it's a hybrid system. But what's very important here is the rubber gasket over here. We have a red rubber gasket, meaning this phone has some form of water resistance. We just don't know if it's rated yet. So let's continue. So the SIM tray was at the bottom, right? So as you can see, it's here. We have a microphone port, and then we have a USB Type C port, and then the speaker grills again. Over here on the right side, we have the volume rocker, and then the power button. The power button has this texture to help differentiate it from the volume rocker if you're not looking at the phone directly. And then of course we have here on top, which is another microphone port. And then lastly, on the left side, it's a very smooth surface. It's very shiny as well. It has tint to it that goes well with the overall look of the phone. Now let's look at the back. The back has this beautiful, smooth, and very slippery frosted glass finish. As you can see here, depending on how the light hits the phone, it shines differently between blue, pink, orange, yellow, depending on how the light hits it. Now, let's look at the front. As you can see, it's this one over here. As you can see, unlike the other Vivo phones of prior years from the V20 series, before they had that pop-up camera. Now they've stopped doing that, and now we have here a super slim earpiece speaker, and then we also have our notch, which has our front-facing camera. And as you can see here, I don't know if you can see it here, but closely you will see that the screen protector has been pre-installed. Now you can also see, it's locked now. Alright, as you can see here guys, the bezels are very thin as well. The side bezels are super thin, with the chin bezel being slightly thicker than the other bezels. Aside from that, it's very nice. Now let's check how bright it goes. This is the maximum brightness. As you can see here, the text and the pictures are very crisp, while the colors are vibrant, and the viewing angles are actually pretty good. Alright, let's now move on to the V20e. Now, since these phones are nearly the same, the unboxing experience should be very similar. The one difference is it doesn't have the dongle because it doesn't need it. The V21e has its own 3.5mm headphone jack on the phone itself, which is becoming more of a feature that is very rare in the higher priced phones. So as you can see here, this one has a very similar size and build, but as you can see here, the back design is quite different. It has a grayish, bluish, blackish colorway, and then you can see that depending on how the light hits it, you will see straight lines going vertically. And then now if you look over here at the bottom, you will see that it does have a headphone jack compared to the V20 5G over here that doesn't have it, because the SIM tray is also at the bottom. While on the right side, we also have the volume rocker and then the power button, but it doesn't have that chamfered power button, that textured power button that makes it easier for you to feel which is the power button or the volume rocker in your pocket. Now on top is just a single microphone port. It's the same with the V21 5G, but here this is the main difference. In the V21 5G, this side was smooth, there was nothing here, but here we have a full 3-slot SIM tray. As you can see here, we have 2 nano SIM slots and then 1 micro SD slot, and then of course we have that red rubber gasket for water resistance. That's pretty nice. Okay, now let's look at the front. Alright, see? They are the same, 6.44-inch Super AMOLED panel, but the V21 5G has a 90Hz refresh rate. The color is vibrant, the text and sharpness is good, the viewing angles are also good. It's actually a pretty good phone for what it is. It just doesn't have 5G. Okay guys, let's look at the performance of both phones. Let's start with the V21 5G over here. So I've already done the benchmarks prior to unboxing the phone itself. So in Antutu, we had a score of over 377,841. Now this is pretty good given that it is a Dimensity 800U. Up next, of course, is our fan favorite Geekbench. In Geekbench, we got a score of 544 and in single core score, and then 1530 in multi-core, meaning we have a very good single core performance, and then we also have a decent multi-core performance for a mid-range phone like this one. In 3D Mark, we also got a good score over here. This one will test the graphical performance of a phone, and as you can see here, we have an overall score of 1602 and an average frame rate of 9.6. So this is actually pretty good. Next up is, of course, our battery test. So we have again a 4000 milliampere battery with 33 watts of flash charging, and we were able to get 17 hours and 23 minutes for the V21 5G. Now this is actually very impressive. This is actually over the years since we've been started in GIZGUIDE, Vivo has always had the very good battery optimization. Their battery capacities have never been the highest, but they've always had the best optimization, so they would also last longer than higher capacity phones, which I have to say. So aside from that, guys, we also did some tests with the internal storage. As you can see here, we have the storage that measures the read and write speeds of our internal storage. As you can see here, we are getting a sequential write speed of 283 megabytes per second and a sequential read speed of 815 megabytes per second. That's pretty fast. So based on the synthetic benchmarks, we have a very good performing phone over here. Now in real world use, I'll show you right now. Let's go to the home screen, and as you can see here, we'll open an app and see how fast it opens up. Let's open the camera. As you can see there, it's already open. Just needs for you to agree. And as you can see there, it's very fluid. Now let's go back to home. Let's open another app. Let's look at gallery. As you can see there, moving around the UI is very slick. also the screen is very responsive. As you can see, I'm moving my finger very fast. It is able to follow the movements of my finger very quickly. Now let's try to close all the apps, and that's it. Now stay tuned for our next video wherein we'll be playing games with the V21 5G and V21e to see if they can perform well in terms of gaming. But for now, in terms of synthetics, benchmarks, and our actual use, this is actually pretty smooth. I mean, navigating through the OS has been a lot easier, and I can't praise Vivo enough for significantly improving the OS experience. And if you look closely, it's already doing the added feature that we mentioned earlier. The the new V series also now includes the virtual RAM feature, wherein it will borrow 3 GB of RAM from the internal storage and add it to the system. So now let's move on to the V21e. As you can see here, let's go over to the screenshots again, guys. So let's look at the Antutu. So as you know, guys, this phone has the Snapdragon 720G SoC. We were able to get a similar, roughly around a 10% difference from the Dimensity 800U of the V21 5G. So we got over 346,026 in Antutu. Now let's move on to the Geekbench. In Geekbench, we have a very similar score actually, very similar. We have around 552 over here for the single core score, and then 1692. This means that they're actually roughly in the same ballpark in terms of performance. It's just that the V21 5G, it has 5G. Alright, now let's look at Wildlife Extreme from 3D Mark. As you can see here, guys, okay, this is where the difference from the V21 5G is seen. It looks like the graphics performance of the V21 5G is significantly better, because earlier we saw an average frames per second of 10, around 10, and an overall score of 1000 something. But here we have 317 only. Alright, now let's look at the battery performance. As you can see here, guys, we got 13 hours and 52 minutes. This is a 4-hour difference from the V21 5G in terms of the battery test, meaning the Dimensity 800U is actually more battery efficient overall. And from our use, actually, they're nearly the same, although the V21 5G does last like an hour or two more than the V21e, depending on our usage. But generally, this one, the V21 5G, does last longer. And this is confirmed by the battery screenshot benchmark over here. Next up, of course, let's look at the internal storage speed test. Over here, as you can see here, we have a sequential write speed of 167 megabytes per second and a sequential read speed of 346 megabytes per second. So as you can see here, the internal storage speeds of the V21e is not as fast as the V21 5G. We were getting around 200 plus for sequential write in the V21 5G, and we were getting around 800 megabytes per second for the sequential read, meaning the internal storage of the V21 5G is significantly better. And this could also mean that the processing power of the MediaTek 800U is better. The performance of the V21 5G overall is looking to be a little bit better. Alright, that is it for our performance side of the review. Let's move on to the cameras. Okay guys, let's talk about one of the most important things about the smartphone is the cameras. So let's go on to the rear facing cameras of both. On paper, they both have a 64 megapixel main rear camera, 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Now on the front is a 44 megapixel selfie camera. On paper, they're very the same, but their performance is actually slightly different. Now, in all of our testing, in daylight, both phones give very crisp, very sharp, very detailed images. The colors are also vibrant, but we did notice that the V21 5G has a greenish tint compared to the V21e. And in the indoors, this is the same story. although the V21e does have a little bit more grain, and the colors are not as accurate than the V21e. Surprisingly, the V21 5G does have the greenish tint, but it's a little bit more accurate or closer to real life than the V21e. Now in low light, surprisingly, the V21 5G does have the greenish tint, but it's a little bit more accurate or closer to real life than the V21e. Now in low light, this is where it gets quite different. The V21e has warmer tones, while the V21 5G has colder tones. Both have more grain in low light, and the sharpness is diminished a little bit, but the colors are still okay. As I said, it's just a little bit greenish on this one, but it is closer to real life with the 5G version. Overall, I would say that they're pretty good. And there is some greenish tint on the V21 5G. This is consistent across all photos. This is in both for the selfie and the main ultra-wide and then macro camera. I also have to comment that the macro camera is not very sharp. It's 2 megapixels, so it will be very, very soft. And the colors are not to write home about. Lastly, for video, it can record up to 4K, but I don't recommend recording in 4K. I recommend turning on the stabilization at the 1080p to get the best results. I do find the footage very sharp, very detailed, especially when it is well lit. It does get grainy in low light. I'm pretty happy with the camera performance of both phones. If it is near the price of the Malaysian pricing, I think this is one of the better cameras for the price. They may be other cameras that are better, but in terms of looks, the V21 5G is still the better looking phone out there. Let's now move on to our overall impressions of the V21 and V21e. Now, as you can see here, from our experience, both phones look similar, specs similarly, but when you put them through their paces, you will see that there is actually quite a bit of a difference. As I said earlier, the 90 Hz refresh rate, the SoC, and of course the color options are the main differences between the two. But because of the difference in SoC, we also have a different image signal processing. So as said earlier, both phones are similarly performing in Antutu and Geekbench, but perform differently with graphic-intensive tasks, meaning the V21 5G has the better graphics performance. So if you want a game, you may want to pick the V21 5G first. Now in terms of camera performance, we also saw that the V21 5G was at times closer to the real-life colors, but it does have a greenish tint overall. It's also the more sharper and more vibrant image, but that's nitpicking of me. The difference between the performance of both the cameras is actually very minimal. The only thing that's really visible is when you put them side by side is you see the greenish tint on this one and the warmer tones in indoors and low light for the V21e. For video performance, both phones are very similar as well, but again, those colors of the greenish tint come out from the V21 5G and the warmer tones for the V21e. Lastly, in terms of the battery performance, both phones last long, but it is clear that the MediaTek Dimensity 800U is more battery efficient, and I feel that it does last a little bit longer by an hour or two depending on my usage. But the thing is, the battery charging speed is roughly the same. We're getting around 60 to 66% of battery in 30 minutes, and it will be fully charged in just under an hour. Depending on your priority, if for example you do not have 5G in your area or you don't plan on using the 5G, the V21e is maybe better value for you, because of course you have the triple slot SIM tray, and you also have a proper 3.5mm headphone jack on the phone itself, whereas the V21 5G has a dongle that is included. and doesn't have a 3.5mm headphone jack, the phone itself. So that depending on your priority, if you don't need 5G and you want a proper headphone jack, then the V21e. But if you want 5G and you want to have a future-proof phone and the better graphics performance and the better battery, the V21 5G is overall the better phone of the two. But if you're not willing to, if you want to save some money and you're okay with some of the compromises of the V21e, it's also a very good value. Hopefully this video has been very informative for you guys. I've enjoyed making this comparison and sharing with you my thoughts and experiences with both phones. This has been Neil. I hope you enjoyed today's video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. If you haven't yet, you may want to subscribe to GIZGUIDE.com. We'll be having, as I mentioned earlier, a gaming focused video for both phones, and if you're interested, you may want to subscribe. And if you want to message us or ask us questions, you can reach us at GIZGUIDE.com or message us at GIZGUIDEPH at all our socials, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and TikTok. And I will see you in the next video. This has been Neil, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.